it's not us versus them or me versus you.
So we're not talking about an us versus them mentality. We're going for this versus that.
This versus that.
Yeah, okay.
I think it helps you get along better.
game.
Right?
Right.
Sometimes
We get along so well, and sometimes you're extreme right, I'm extreme left, I'm liberal, you're a conservative, and yet we get along so well. That's marvelous, wonderful.
That's amazing.
That's amazing.
Okay.
Amazing grace.
So today,
Saved a wretch.
like you. So today, what we're going to do.
That's good. Come on, talk to me. Get in that microphone.
What we're going to do is trying to give you a little example
An
of
example. Give me an example of
this versus that thing.
would he have said,
didn't want
come
to
on,
know.
Hillary, vote for me, baby.
No.
No.
I
wasn't
don't
doing
know. I don't know about that. Good morning, Covington Beach. No, Cocoa Beach, whatever.
Good morning, Coco.
Good morning, Cocoa Beach.
And
Welcome
beach.
to the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is, this is this, and it's versus that. So it's this versus that.
So I'm this and you're that.
That's what we were told.
Okay.
So this versus that, and we know it's not us versus them, or do we? Or do we? And that's what we're talking about today. Are we just pulling your leg? Is it nirvana to think that that can happen? That we can all get along just based on our differences in substance instead of personalities? Like if I didn't know you and you rubbed me the wrong way, would I still like vote for you? There's a lot of explaining to do. Because, Trump does rub me the wrong way, but I did vote for him.
Okay, you did vote for him. What do you think about that, Diana? My wife voted for Trump. What say you?
She's speechless,
Oh
people.
my, I don't know about that, Rhonda.
Well,
Come on,
okay.
talk to my wife right now. We need to open up a little bit. Let's air our grievances. Let's see if it's this versus that, or is it really, truly Diana versus Rhonda Sue?
Well, let me talk to
Come
Daryl.
on, talk to
Let
me.
me talk to Daryl, because Daryl, I know.
Okay, Daryl's going to be nice.
Diana will
Jump in, Daryl.
Daryl, you be nice to me. Diana.
Be nice.
And I'm slightly to the left of Bernie Sanders.
Woo!
Oh, my God. I mean,
How could that be?
well, see, I'm very liberal.
Where's
and
my person? Daryl. Honestly, where are you?
Daryl, where
I'm
art
pretty
thou?
liberal, and I voted for Trump.
Yes. Kindred spirit.
Okay.
It may not make sense, but I consider myself liberal, but I did vote for Trump, and it's a question of honesty for me, the information that I prefer as much honesty as we can get, but that's, I don't want to get into all that. It's
Exactly. Yeah. This
So
versus that.
you're saying that you voted for Trump because you were honest. That would imply what?
No, because
I'm joking.
Stop. He is honest.
I honestly voted for him.
There you go.
He's more honester than
Okay. He's more honester.
more honester.
Okay, that
Diana,
works.
I was just joking about that. I mean,
Oh, of course.
I figured you did not. I don't even know if who you voted for or not, or if you wrote in Captain Kangaroo. That's not. So that has nothing to do with why I like you. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's,
There is a question in this that I think that we ought to talk about just for a moment, because if
Okay.
it's going to be truly this versus that, I think a question was asked here. We think our vote actually counts. In other words, if our vote doesn't count, let's just look at that for a moment. Why are so many people shaming one another when it comes to, oh, you voted for Trump, or you voted for Bernie, or you voted for, what was her name? I mean, she keeps trying to get on television to become more popular. Hillary, I think she's pregnant, if I'm not mistaken.
stop it. Now that
Not
is
by Bill
wrong.
Clinton.
That I'm telling you is
How is
wrong.
that wrong? You said that she looked pregnant.
It's a lie from the pit of hell.
Come
I
on.
did not
I said,
say
is
that.
Hillary pregnant? I
Lie.
said, yeah.
Lie.
Diana, is Hillary
Liar.
pregnant? Did you see her in India?
Liar, liar, liar.
I did not see her there.
She
I tell
could
you,
be.
it would be something worse, Shay. Yeah, because she's got a few years on me. And I'm Precambrian, right?
Well,
In the
here-
Bible, in the days of Sarah.
Well, I'm simply arguing that I think that Hillary Clinton is pregnant based upon she's a theist. She's very much after the order of Mary. Yeah, and Mary was, what was she, 12?
That's not why you said that. It's
I mean,
a typical,
come on.
a typical
No, it's not.
man response.
No,
Going
it isn't.
somewhere
It's
we
just
don't wanna
funny.
go.
We are.
It's
we are.
just funny.
Diana, it's a typical man response. He saw her in a garment and it was hugging her, and she had a few extra pounds on her, whatever. Like,
But it was-
we women tend to get in our middle age sometimes.
Okay, but if you
and,
see it,
as I have, and you said, "Look, it looks like she's pregnant," and that was horrible. As much as I really
I mean,
don't
think
care
about
for
what
her.
that would do to the community of science if she were actually pregnant. I mean, think about it. I mean, we can't even experiment about this and that on this show. I mean, is it truly this or that, or this versus that? Because I'm not talking about Hillary, that is, in a negative sense. I'm just asking if she's pregnant because, I mean, if people can actually get pregnant at her age,
Well, I hope so, and I hope to God it's not by Bill, because that would be cheek skeevy.
yeah, they would probably
I don't
call
know.
her, if they had another little girl, they'd call her Monica.
Shoot, this is going nowhere fast.
Monica Lewinsky.
Okay, let's.
Okay. I mean, that would be her middle name, Monica
I'm so ashamed of
Lewinsky
you.
Clinton. I mean, this is just funny. We're having fun.
Yet again.
Okay, my wife voted for Trump. What say you, Diana? You never did speak to that.
She was speechless.
I cast my vote for Miss Clinton. I wasn't exactly happy with that. I would much rather have voted for Mr. Sanders, but the way I was looking at it, I saw Mr. Trump as not at all qualified and possibly dangerous. And perhaps that's been borne out.
Well, let me ask you a few questions because I'm not a Trump fan, but if you take someone who has a server and it's connected to, let's say, a government-only kind of connection, and they put it in their home without telling the right people, and if they tether that to the internet so people can have access, and when people start looking at that, they ask for the hard drive, they ask for the computer. They don't ever get the hard drive nor the computer. They just they just get what she gives. In fact, when she gave what she gave, some of the devices were smashed up with a hammer. She was not, trying to protect herself. She was being very, very honest that day. She's not at all a hawk, right?
I'm not so sure about that.
Well, that's my point about the
Right,
violence
exactly.
and the narrative that she spins, because all of the data that is at the time indicates that Trump would be to the left of her when it comes to violence, because she's very much hawkish. Look at all the drone strikes that the Obama administration was doing. And so my point is, when you look at the details of Hillary's life, and I get the spin in the media and I get the spin in terms of Trump, I mean, he comes off as a shock jock. And I understand some people like to interpret that as this guy is one of these evil persons, the most evil person on the planet. But if we can step back for a second, could it be true? And I'm just asking the question, could it be true that maybe this guy's just a shock jock and he's trying to say, I'm really a liberal, but I couldn't get voted in by the liberals, but I could by the Republicans. And so I'm just going to become this jackass who will plow the field a bit. I mean, is that possible?
It's possible. I'm not sure how likely it is, considering what has been going on in the administration so far. We've had the big tax cut, which is inflating the budget. And to make up for that, there's the proposals of cutting so many social services that a lot of us are going to be left high and dry. Then you have the anti-LGBT mood that's been in the administration. I know that Trump said he's our friend hasn't borne out.
Right. That's one of my disappointments.
It-
He did acknowledge that and say,
Right.
if it's just for, the LGBTQ financially wealthy community, they can use the restroom in Trump Tower anyone they want. That's horrible.
Okay, but let's
Because
look
he
at,
said it toward Caitlyn.
okay, but let's state it this way, and it sounds like I'm defending Trump, but I'm really not. When you look at Hillary Clinton, when you look at her husband, let's go back into the Clinton years and look at Bill, and let's also look at his sidekick. They ran on a ticket, and they ran with a rebel flag as one of their emblems here in the South. You can just Google that. You can see the Confederate flag. It's all over Bill Clinton's narrative. He's trying to sell himself to the South. Isn't that a bit racist?
Just a little.
Come on, not just a little. I mean, what about the
I mean,
Confederacy?
I'm going to openly admit, I voted for what I saw as the lesser of two evils.
Okay, but
I
my,
really
my
didn't
point
like
is,
either of them.
but my point is, if her husband ran as the Confederate candidate, and what does that imply? And he maintained that Confederate mindset along with his VP. I'm just asking the question, what took place there? And so when you keep moving forward in the keep moving forward to the Obama administration, when we talk about the tax cut that, yes, that Trump gave us, it's scary. But what was there about the Obama administration that was less scary? In that, where did he get all of this money to stimulate the economy? I mean, did that not also as well inflate? And isn't, in a sense, inflation a positive thing? That is, in some regards, of economy. In other words, how can you actually end debt? Some economists say that the way to end debt or to balance the budget is to inflate. I mean, what are your thoughts?
I don't know about inflation. Debt, I can see, is necessary. I mean, there was one point in the history of the United States that the entire national debt was paid off. I think that was during Jackson's term. And if I remember correctly, somebody correct me, please, if I'm wrong on this, but that actually may have triggered a recession, if not a depression. I remember reading an article, I think last year, that some degree of debt is necessary. I don't know if
Oh, we think so.
$12 trillion is necessary, but
I get your point, and I think this is the purpose of this program is to get to the point to where when I'm speaking to my wife, it doesn't become a boxing match. It doesn't become something that, let me disparage her, okay? And this is what I'm not trying to do about Hillary. I should be able to make a joke that is, oh, wasn't she pregnant? That shouldn't be offensive. It should be, hey, this is just funny.
And she
That's
even fell. You didn't know that, did she? She fell
No.
again, which is sad.
Sure it is.
It makes me wonder, what's wrong.
Because I truly empathize with the lady, because to live in a marriage like she has lived, with her husband doing all that he did, I mean, I can't imagine having the feelings that she's had throughout the years. Daryl, jump into the conversation. What are your thoughts on Hillary being pregnant and
Or Slick Willie.
or Slick Willie or whatever? Talk to me.
I haven't, to be quite honest with you, I haven't given any thought concerning Hillary being pregnant. I haven't even seen any pictures of her recently, so I have no input there. But I like what Diana said about the lesser of two evils. I think a lot of people voted that way, in their opinion, which would be worse. Now, I want to state this concerning Trump, and this is something that you might like, Michael. To me, in some ways, Trump represents the Archie Bunker of our time. I think I don't think a lot of things he says are meant, it's kind of like what you were saying about Hillary being pregnant. They're not meant to be insulting or racist or anything like that. They're not coming from that vantage point. It's more of a thing of, let's be honest. Let's look at ourselves and see how we really are and see if we can do better than this. And, you know, he seems to be a guy that actually, embraces races and gender and things like that, at least to a certain degree, maybe more so, especially than a lot of conservatives. And I think as far as that end of things go, he has shown more of a willingness to be adjustable than either party, really. I don't see him so much as a hard right or a hard
I
left.
agree.
But his language, I think, throws people off. And if we'll pay attention, I think we'll end up examining ourselves rather than so much scrutinizing the man. That's just my opinion.
I
So-
like that, yeah.
I mean, what you're offering is a viewpoint that is, what if Trump, being very, very talented, that is in the entertainment business, what if he is wearing, in a sense, the mask of an Archie Bunker, that is this hard-nosed Republican trying to see what it would look like if you got the votes. In other words, I'm simply trying to make this point. Bill Clinton isn't a racist, and he has nothing in common with the Confederacy and that narrative, and yet he used the flag. Now, did he do that as an Archie Bunker approach? Many of these politicians, in order to reach out to a community of people, a diverse community of people, do these politicians play various roles, wear various hats, not for the purpose of saying, I agree with that narrative, but simply to say, I will be your president? Is there a difference?
Well, there's certainly a difference. And, to approach people, I think what we've always seen in the past is this us versus them. These people are all the way like this, and these people are all the way like that. And so we're going to take a stand against each other, and if we have to, we'll kill each other. I mean, we'll just go to war, like we've done so many times in the past. But if we can somewhat identify with each other and say, you're people, you just happen to be people in this category, I'm going to reach out to you rather than waiting for you to reach out to me. I think there can be wisdom in that. I'm not saying that that's what we necessarily see, or if it can be obvious or detected at times, but it's a starting point, if nothing else, and we can hope for that.
Right.
And if it's not intended, and other people take it that way and begin to do that anyway, and I've seen a lot of that. One thing, I live down here close to, well, actually, we experienced a lot of this thing that we call Harvey, and it was actually enjoyable to watch just people, helping other people. There was one point where there was someone floating down the street. Somebody put a camera down there. I think the reporter put his microphone down and jumped in the vehicle and helped save somebody. And it's like the important things kind of begin to surface, and that's where I think we can start. Is I hate to say that we have to wait for some big crisis, but somehow or another, and like you mentioned, the shock jock effect, and
Right.
I think that's gotten a lot of people's attention, and if it just sharpens up the Bernie supporters to where they can get a better agenda in there, great, But whatever it takes to level the playing field, getting people to realize the needs of others and the similarities that we have as human beings.
I guess this is where we need to go. We have a few minutes left, but when I look at Trump, I see someone who is very intuitive. He's very intuitive.
I believe so.
He was talking about North Korea years ago on a show when he was debating, going back and forth with Low Energy Jeb. It was so funny because he was nuancing everything that's happening today with North Korea. It was like he was prophesying that it would happen. And so there are many things about Trump that are very interesting, to say the least. And he does have an overreach. In other words, in real estate, for instance, people will overreach. That is in the context that he's in. And so they always overplay because at the end of the day, they're going to settle for far less. And so there's a lot of hyperbole involved. And in his world, he's going to he doesn't mind the tension. He likes looking at things from different angles. And some people are simply saying he's lying, but he could be multi-axial in that he's willing to look at different viewpoints and say that there's not only one pathway of getting to, let's say, there. And so a lot of people will disparage him. And I think when it comes to this versus them mentality, I think that's what the media has become. They're against him instead of against, let's say, the things that are said or whatever.
His policies.
Right.
And it's so evident.
Right.
It is so evident. And
I mean, they want to call him a racist. They want to disparage the person. It's not like they are speaking in a very articulate manner, an extremely articulate manner about the substance of what he's saying. In other words, I've asked over and over again, when it comes to Trump, he's the kind of guy that uses half sentences. He's a shock jock. He's using metaphor most of the time. Have you actually taken the time to consider what his intent was? Have you accomplished doing this syntagmatic and paradigmatic analysis? Do you understand this indexical thing that's going on with him? In other words, when we were at that rally, he would make a comment to the camera, turn to the side, and wink. I mean, what he said is not what he meant. He's throwing out surface language to feed the trolls. We can't argue that the media is not trollish. It is. It's trolling him day and night. They're trolling him to disparage the person. They're not talking about news. They're not reporting substance. It's all about us versus them. That's what we have here in America, and that's a problem. It's like, the Russians, the Russians, the Russians, the Russians. We should be saying, quit saying that. That's like saying the blacks, the blacks, the blacks, or the whites, the whites, the whites. There's something about this that needs to be carefully looked at. We need to start saying it may be true that Putin himself is a bad guy, and he's done X, Y, and Z wrong. But if we are to have any hope in the future of peace, let's reach out to the Russian people. Let's reach out to all kinds of people all over the planet and start saying it's no longer us versus them. Let's have a conversation about what's really going on, what's really wrong. And I think that, I don't know, I feel like in a sense that the 1%ers, those people who have the most and they're the least in terms of number, they want a conversation down at the bottom of this pyramid scheme to be an us versus them. And so I don't want to play that game any longer. I would like for us to be able to have someone on the show who would be a Bernie Sanders supporter, a Trump supporter, and neither one of the persons chose to disparage either candidate, but we could just have some fun and talk about substance. And a while ago when I was talking about Hillary, I don't want anyone to think that I'm trying to disparage her. She's a very articulate person, very well educated,
Brilliant.
probably
Right.
the most competent person ever to be president. Well, I'm saying there's a difference between competence and integrity, and I'm separating the two. And I think that she lost, the wisdom along the way for some reason. It could have had something to do with Bill. I don't know.
I guess power does that to you, not that I would really know, but when you get just a little crumb of it, it'll sway you in so many different directions. And I think there are cautionary tales in the Bible about power.
Right.
however true they are or not, it's a tale to, use and say, if I ever get some power, I don't want to be like that.
I don't want to be like that.
I really don't. I really
I
don't.
get that. I get that.
There was I've heard it said that power corrupts, and absolute power absolutely corrupts. And in some ways, I think that is the way that, and not to change the subject here, but that's the way I've come to see this God that I used to believe in, absolute power, and whatever he said goes. And that doesn't mean that it was all good and right, because apparently this God was being fashioned by someone other than the God itself or himself. And so it it seems to be that's the way this power play works. You get someone who's after the power, then you need the people who want to fashion that one that's in power to bring about their will. So to me, it's one of the toughest positions a person can be in, especially if they're an empathetic, caring person, because to be able to withstand all of the pressure and all the influence that comes your way in that position, I don't know how anybody survives it.
Right. Yeah. It's a tough job, even if the person that is in quote unquote power you don't, respect, like whatever, care for, didn't vote for. You have to at least say to yourself, my gosh, that's a lot of, pressure on this person. Even if I see Trump do something boneheaded, and I still think, it's so. I mean, Diana, you don't absolutely hate the man, right? I just want to kind of feel you out just for a minute. What do you, do you have any empathy at all for him, like just because of the position he's in?
Well, I don't necessarily hate the man. I hate a lot of what the administration is doing.
Yes.
Daryl mentioned Harvey. Now, I know it wasn't Harvey, it was a K hurricane, and I can't remember the name, that did a job on Puerto Rico. They haven't got electric power even yet. What's going on? Because the way I understand it, the bags that hold saline solution for IV drips, I think about, 80% of them or something like that are
Yes.
manufactured in Puerto Rico.
Yes.
And now there's a shortage because they're not able to do that.
Absolutely.
So, even on that point alone, you have the administration doing, setting nothing into motion. Never mind that these people are suffering horribly. Just if you want to be a businessman, think about the business of it.
Right.
And there was something else I was going to say and I lost it, but that's normal for me.
Well, that is a good point. We don't hear a lot of positive things coming out of that situation right now. We don't really hear a lot of anything coming
Right.
About what's going on. And to be honest, they've sort of drifted away from my circle of, importance in my life. When things start dumping on me, then something has to go, because I'm human. And but FEMA, that arm of the administration, hopefully, and different parts obviously would have to handle something like that. And just because you mentioned it, I'm going to find out for myself what in the world is going on.
That's a really good point, because this is where I think we've come to rely on media, and I wonder where they are in this.
Right.
Why aren't we getting any reports
Right.
from Puerto Rico? Does that mean things are going better and it's not news to them, or that maybe they won't allow them in there because things are so bad? That would be a good thing to check into. What is really going on?
Exactly.
When the initial reports were coming out, it seems like a lot of help was arriving there, but not near enough. But the problem seemed to be more of one of the remoteness and the isolation of the country. Bridges were destroyed. They couldn't get to a lot of the people throughout the country. You know, hopefully, I mean, I would like to think, and I'd like to know if this is not the case, but that they're getting things done over there and getting that nation back on its feet, because it was devastated, far worse than anything we experienced in this part of the world.
Absolutely.
And not to give you a hard time, Daryl, but, you know, when you were talking about that country or that part of the country, I think a lot of people forget that Puerto Rico is part of the United States.
Right.
You know, more than once in my lifetime, they've tried to be the 51st state. And I do remember now what I was going to say before. The cabinet is in a shambles. There was going to be, I don't know if it's still on, negotiations with Kim Jong-un, and state is totally wrecked. Tillerson's been fired. I saw somewhere, I don't know if it's fake news or not, that they were going to send Ivanka to North Korea. And you know, what experience does she have in international negotiations? It's like, what's going on here?
Right.
Okay, but I've got a curiosity question, and when you go back into the history of Trump, this is not in defense of Trump, by the way, but when you look at Trump and what he said concerning North Korea, you can go back 10 years ago. I mean, there seems to be something that this guy does where he puts something on the table, and he's very intuitive, is what I'm trying to nuance. But what he said to Jeb on stage about North Korea, it's almost as if all of this stuff has come to pass. Now, we have to give it, that is, a little bit of time. Is this guy playing Tillerson? You play the good cop, and I'll play the bad cop. I mean, he's not past doing that. He's not past using people. So the question that I have is, since we've had no president since the Korean War who's ever met with, let's say, a leader of Korea, here Trump has managed to get that done in a little over a year. And so he now is negotiating, or will negotiate, for the United States. So many times we've always looked to the State Department to do all of the diplomacy and all of that. But isn't the landscape changing a bit in that leaders all over the world are tired of people who are not in the know, that is, at the top, knowing the landscape of, let's say, X, Y, and Z? Are not leaders trying to say something for themselves? In other words, it's obvious that Tillerson was not representing the Trump narrative. Would you agree with that? And if you have someone beneath you, not as in hierarchy, but as in if you have someone that you've hired to represent you and they fail to do so, and they choose to do it in a deep state way, I should say, isn't it true that you have the right to say, you know, if he wants to play games over here, let him play games. I can reach out to this guy in a way that I know will work. I mean, what Trump offers, he has a lot of knowledge when it comes to how things work, and most of it is through the greenback, and you would admit to that, would you not?
Oh, definitely. Through the door, through business. Yeah.
Right, and so when we put sanctions on Russia, when we put sanctions on North Korea, it's all about money. It's all about having stuff, right? I mean, this guy Trump, he knows a lot about that, and the media keeps acting as if this guy is extremely dumb. Well, if he's so dumb, not intelligent enough to put things together, my question is, how could he arrive at a place where no other president could, that is since the Korean War, where he's actually going to sit down with the leader of North Korea? I mean, whatever he's done this in a brilliant way. You may not agree with that brilliance. And the thing that I fear here in America is that we are disparaging each other rather than saying, I may not agree with his methods and his practices, but someone else is resonating with it and they're willing to come to the table. I mean, why would we not fight for a pluralistic approach? In other words, everyone doesn't have to be like me. Everyone doesn't have to be like my wife. Everyone doesn't have to be like Diana or Daryl. We need diversity. We need pluralism. And in this thing that we call the experiment, the United States of America, are we not willing to practice a little bit of pluralism? And if this guy was voted in, that is by a system that we count worthy as a just vote, why would we not support a president who's able to accomplish something like this?
Well, I don't know if Trump has done this or if it has been done for him.
Well, it's
I think I would
happening.
need
I mean,
somebody more competent than myself to give an assessment of that.
well, yeah, Tillerson could have set all of this stuff up and gotten fired right after the fact. I don't know. The thing that seems to be apparent is that the people of Korea, they have seen great value in our president, and we here in America, many people have seen no value at all in Trump, and that scares me. It scares me when people paint someone as completely evil. Do you get what I'm saying? We meet people all the time, and it's sad that someone will come along. Well, that person's a thief. Well, it may be true that that person might have stolen something. For instance, if you take a person who's in poverty and they don't have any way of, getting food, they may turn to, pulling something off the shelf. And so the question has to come back, should we put that person in prison, or have we created an economy to where people can't survive without stealing? Does that make sense?
That makes absolute sense. I've been there.
Okay, but
There
on
was,
the
there was a time when I ate what I could steal.
okay, but on the flip side, politically, have we created such a deep state that the only way to get out of this is to have a jackass that will plow the field?
Oh, wow. My concern with that is that a jackass may totally wreck the field more easily than plow it for planting.
But are we assuming that the field is in good shape before the jackass was put in office? See, this is where
the field may not have been in good shape. The jackass may be making it even worse. Who can tell?
But I'm simply saying that the plantation-style economy that we have today, it's not working for all of us. It's working
Right.
for very few of us. And so my question is it wrong for us to approach this from a different way? Let's take Chris Rock. If he took his comedic ways and became president and he used some of the language that he uses on stage, that probably would offend some people, and some people would want to shame him. But in my view, I think that having pluralism, I think there is a strength there. I think that Chris Rock has a view. He has eyes where he can see things that I can't, and I need to learn from him. Does that make any sense?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And so I may not agree totally with him, and for the record, I voted for Obama. I'm very much a Bernie Sanders fan, not a Trump fan. But I do see the value of having various characters come into play, that is. And so I'm not one who's going to say, oh, this guy is totally bad, he's totally wrong. I learned that in church years ago. We're totally depraved. There's nothing good about any of us. And I had to throw that away, and I'm afraid that Americans are turning to that same doctrine of Calvinism, total depravity, and I just don't go for it. And so I'm more for a discussion on this versus that rather than us versus them. Make sense?
It
Oh,
makes,
yeah. Oh, sorry about that.
that's okay. It makes a lot of sense to me because I lived in that, what I'm going to call a trap for so many years. of judging a person by their acceptance. I mean, if you really get to the core of the Christian idea, if a person hasn't received Jesus as their Lord and Savior and invited him into their lives, even in the best, most palatable, I don't know how to put it, forms of Christianity, you still have that in the back of your mind. I can't trust this person. They're still in that sinful state. And if you're a Calvinist, they're totally depraved. There's nothing good about them. So how can you trust them? And for a long time, that was my criteria for determining most things. Do I want a president who hasn't done this, who's not, born again Christian? And my answer would have been emphatically no. But I'm beyond that now. I'm looking at imperfect people who I've got to try with the best means I have to determine what is their intention. What motivates them, or do they really care about people? And it doesn't really have anything to do with what they believe or whether they've, gone through some motion that I think well, to be honest with you, I think in every case it's just emotion. You can go down, you can maybe even make some tears appear in your eyes and say, oh, I've been a sinner, but I'm accepting Jesus and now I'm fixed. I can do good now. I couldn't a few minutes ago, but now I can. And like I said, I lived in that state for a lot of years. And I want to add one thing to just a side note here. I'm looking forward to, because it seems to me like what's been happening since Trump has been president, there's been an approach of we're going to approach this, we're going to approach this, we're going to approach this. I'm looking forward to and looking for it. It hasn't happened yet that I know of. He made statements about the inner cities of this country. I'm very interested in the inner cities of this country and what's going to be done for them. What has been done thus far, to the point that he became president, is I think they've gone downhill. I don't think there's been much improvement at all. But when I hope to see what he has in mind, and if he really has something in mind, because I think it's very important. I think that's probably the most tragic aspect of our country, is in our larger cities, what has happened to the inner city.
Oh, good point. Good point.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Well,
What I would like to see, I would like to see empathy. I would like to see the general person on the street begin to have empathy for the others out there. That's, especially right now, I'm not seeing that. There are pockets here and there, and I'd really like to see them expand. And maybe that is one thing that Trump is doing for us, if only by negative example. Maybe he is galvanizing the person on the street to really take some constructive action. I hope that's the case.
Go ahead.
well, I mean, that was one reason I asked Diana, did you think about, Trump and feel empathy toward him as being, the leader of quote unquote free world, and, the pressures that come with that and the responsibilities and the digging at him. And don't get me wrong, I know that he does that, and let's just say he did it first. But I was taught, and I don't always practice it, because like we talked about last week, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you.
Right.
Just because Trump does this and that, now we see members, high-ranking members of the last administration and others that were powerful in Washington, they're digging back. And so when they talk about Trump being rude, using Twitter, as a bashing board or whatever, now they have fallen into that same, situation that, Trump does. And so I would like to see us try to be more empathetic toward him and see how that goes. See how that goes on a daily. This is an experiment, on a daily basis. Get up. I'm not saying get up and pray for your president. Christians do that. They've got that covered. But just think, today is a hard day. It's a hard day for me, and I don't have the pressures that he does. But I have enough pressure that I understand. I can't imagine if I heard all this negativity on me day in and day out, about me, my family, my this and that. It would be overwhelming to me. And so that's really all I'm saying is, hey, let's get up tomorrow and say, I hope the president does well today, because when he does well, our country does well. And
So what you're saying in brief is, if Chris Rock were voted in as president and people got a hold of a lot of photos, look, Chris Rock is standing next to this person or that person, he must be colluding, and so we call a special counsel, and we make it impossible for this gentleman to actually do anything that is within the framework that he brings to the office. In other words, if we corner a dog, we know what a dog's going to do. If we corner any human being and put so much pressure on them, are they going to react any different than a dog would, in a sense? And so, the question is, are Americans who did not vote for Trump, are they giving, or are they trying to take something away? In other words, I would hate to think that Chris Rock would be voted in and we would call a special counsel and do everything that's being done to Trump. I mean, there is absolutely no evidence of Russian collusion, and even if there were, collusion is not against the law, and so we have a special counsel for what? I mean,
Right.
this is nuts.
Yeah,
And so
if
we
he
have the
did something.
FBI leader, Comey. He actually takes evidence and gives it outside of a certain framework, and that's fine. We have McCabe. He lacks candor. He lies, and if you lied, you'd be in prison today if you lied to the FBI. But he can lie to the FBI and everyone else, and so I think it's hypocritical, that is, for people to get involved in these resistance things. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no,
Go for it.
I think it is great too, and it's one of our freedoms that we have. But let's not be what we hate. Let's not
Right.
go like Michelle Obama said, like her or not. When they go low, let's go high.
Right, I agree with that. That's a powerful statement, because
Or as Karen Walker said on Will and Grace, when they go low, let's get high. So you could go either way. Either way.
Here's my spin on Hillary, and this is the reason that I didn't vote for her. When I look at Obama, and I did vote for Obama, I don't think that he was allowed to do the very thing that he ran on. I don't think that he could do that well, simply because I think the Clintons were pressuring him to go in a certain direction. I don't think that the outcome of his administration represents what he had in mind. And I think this is where Trump is. Trump has so many of these deep state Republicans and deep state Democrats. They're pushing him into certain things. But if we can remember back in the day when, this 9/11 thing took place. I mean, that was a horrible day here in America to watch those buildings coming down. But our president didn't have the facts that would suggest that it was Iraq, but he came up with his model, if you will. He came up with a model that he sold to the Senate, and every one of these people in the Senate, except for a handful, voted to invade a country. I mean, if you look at the UN and what it requires to invade another country, we broke all the laws, that is, international laws. And so when you have a president like President Bush who violates international law, and he did, and leads the Senate to vote as they did, and they violate and violate and violate, we can't say that we're not in deep trouble when we invade countries and we use what's called shock and awe methodology. That is, we kill men and women everywhere there in Baghdad as as a means to say, we are the big guy, we have the strong arm, you guys better do what we are telling you. In a sense, what that creates, it creates more reason for these people to retaliate. And so, playing this violence for violence thing in war strategy isn't working. And so, well before Trump ever got in, we had some people doing some extremely bad things. And by the time that Obama got in, he was very much a liberal. Thankful for that. I think he would have taken us in a Bernie Sanders direction. But I think the Clintons forced him to take us back toward the right. Just my opinion.
Yeah, I think.
Well, don't forget too that when Obama was elected, that was the beginning of the Tea Party, and the incredible opposition that the Obama administration faced. Now, I'm not about to say that Barack Obama was perfect, but he did face some incredible hurdles.
But you would have to agree with me in that Obama seems like the person who was looking for universal health care. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, he did what he could.
I mean, he was
fought to get it.
right, but he was smart enough to understand, I'm going to have to do this in steps. I'm working with people who hate that notion that people could have health care without making lots and lots of money and contributing to health care. And so he was fighting a battle on many fronts. And so when Hillary became part of his administration, that seemed to go into a different direction, because it was when Hillary became heavily involved in his administration, that's when he became more of a war dog. Do you see that? And I don't think that was Obama at all, but I think that he bought into it because, you can get more votes if you get in bed with those people who are hawks. And I don't think he was a hawk, but I think that he's going to be known as a hawk simply because of the people he hired. And this is the question that I have concerning Trump. Trump has hired many, many people who have a conservative, hawkish philosophy, and they feel as if you have to approach people in a certain way. One thing that we should be thankful for is that Trump hasn't approached North Korea like George Bush approached Iraq. I mean, think about how unmeasured and how crazy George Bush was. That is, in leading a hurting country. I mean, people were bloodthirsty at that time. We got hit, and we need to pay them back. And so, if George Bush knew anything about mimetic theory, he would not want to make, let's say, Iraq the scapegoat, correct? But he was looking for a scapegoat. He was looking for someone to blame. He wasn't looking for the facts. He didn't want to think about this could have been just a handful of people doing this. Instead of dealing with a handful of people, he wanted a broad stroke. And if there's ever one who got us into this broad stroking, all these Muslims are bad, he led the Senate to vote in that direction, because you can't declare war on these Muslim nations like they did and invade countries without disparaging their faith, correct?
Disparaging their faith, disparaging them.
Sure, because
if
they
I
are
remember correctly,
theocracies.
A lot more civilians died
Right.
and all that than any combatants did.
Right, because when you invade a theocracy, what does that suggest?
Let me see where you're headed here. Could it suggest that you're trying to be, in a way, a theocracy yourself?
No, well, that's a good point. But my point is, when you're willing to say, listen, we have nothing compelling, but we're just going to make it up as we go along. We have inspectors over there. We actually have had inspectors on the ground in Iraq, yeah. What inspectors do we have on the ground in North Korea as compared to Iraq? And yet Trump has shown great wisdom in not doing anything but just surrounding things with a complex of ships, etc., correct? And so when it comes
Well,
to
he was playing
suspending,
chicken with Kim also.
but my point is,
Something worked.
Okay, something's happening here. You can show strength without striking someone. George Bush led people to strike and strike hard. He did the strikes without having anything. He led this nation to violate international law. Should we be proud of that? I mean, even
Absolutely
okay,
not.
okay, but who is the
And we're
one
still
who?
suffering for
Okay,
it.
but who is the only candidate in the primaries in the debate when it came to the election cycle itself who nuanced that George Bush was crazy for doing this and these senators were crazy for doing this? The only person who really nuanced that well would be Trump, and that's where Bernie Sanders backed him up. Correct?
I'm trying to think back to that. I don't remember enough of that conversation to really be confident in saying anything.
Okay, we're out of time, and so I've been talking way too much. And so, Daryl, what are your final thoughts?
Well, I love this conversation. I think this kind of hits home should hit home with all of us. And, we make our decisions based on the best information that we have. But I just want to add an interesting experience. Just yesterday, I took a young man, a good friend of ours, to Houston, to, of all places, the George Bush Intercontinental Airport. And I wasn't even thinking about the name or anything that we've talked about this morning, which I very much agree with. I think that was an ill-advised move, a tragic time for our country when we had that shock and awe thing going on. But setting that aside, names and mistakes and et cetera, one of the things that I enjoyed yesterday was as I was leaving the terminal after dropping our friend off, they have kind of a monument. I don't know exactly what you'd call it, but you drive by it and you see it really well as you're going over a bridge out of the airport. And it is like these columns that are designed as flags representing apparently the different countries that planes fly into from Houston. And to me, that represents the very thing that we should all be looking forward to and working toward, and that is a peaceable relationship among nations. I mean, my friend right now, I guess, is sitting in Istanbul, waiting to take a train to Cologne, Germany, to see his sweetheart.
Lord have mercy.
She has quite a history. She was Muslim and now she has no religion. And when he was telling me about sharing that with someone recently, she used to be Muslim and they said, oh, so now she's Christian. And he said, well, no. That kind of threw them off, was she converted? No, I guess she was deconverted, but hasn't been converted to anything. She's just for humanity now, I think, as I understand it. So these are the kind of things that mean something to me, interaction and moving forward among humanity. And I hope we can continue to go there.
Yeah, so well put. Absolutely.
That's good.
That's good.
Great points. What say you?
I thought that was great. I enjoyed Daryl's last comment, obviously, with the flags. And, we get so involved in our, daily lives, we don't often think of globally. Sometimes I can't get out of the community and even think about the state, and of course, our country, but it is good. And Diana bringing up, Puerto Rico, I haven't thought about Puerto Rico in a long time, and now I want to find out what in the world's going on. Even the, mainstream media, they haven't brought it up. So, they've got bigger fish to fry, I guess, Russian fish to fry. And so let's find out what's going on in Puerto Rico and see what we can do to help. Yeah, thank you, Diana, for bringing that up. That was good.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, Diana, final thoughts?
I guess I'll just go back to point I made earlier, I would really like to see empathy.
Yes.
I would really
I
like
agree.
to see the average person on the street realize that all those other people out there, just like he is, just like she is, they want the same.
Okay, we're out of here.
We're out of here. Peace out.